Welcome everybody, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Sweetgrass Preparedness video series. Today we're going to be talking about how to survive up until the point you need to survive. For example, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, type 1 and type 2 are a little bit rampant in our society, and especially among kind of like the good old boy crowd. You got a lot of really big guys, not that they're, not supposed to be big framed, but because they eat a lot of breads, potatoes, pasta, eat a lot of meat along with that. Now the theory is right now, and doctors can say, well, we know what happens, but look how much medicine they've recalled over the past 15 years. Look at every 6 months we've got a new diet. Well, what about the human diet? I chose to go paleo a while back, but these guys are eating meat along with potatoes along with bread. Now, like I said, the theory is something called glycation. When you eat meat with carbohydrates, especially a lot of carbohydrates, kind of like pasta and bread with meat, then what happens is the fats and the protein from the meat bind with the carbohydrates from the bread and from the potatoes, and that's what actually causes your plaque buildup in your arteries. You're actually supposed to have cholesterol. It's what repairs your arteries. So anyway, so what I'm doing today is I'm going to show you a couple different things that I've done to kind of free myself from not just, grains and gluten, but also potatoes and rice and some of the other things that we're not really supposed to eat. Now, I want you to think about the natural evolution of humans, whether it's 20,000 years ago to today, or we're talking 1 million years ago. Think about what we would have eaten. We're grazers. We like to eat as we go. We also eat a lot of meat. If you look at any indigenous population, you're looking at people that eat around 67% meat. They also eat fruits. They also eat vegetables. They eat, seafood. Like I said, think about things that humans would have eaten 1 million years ago, 100,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, etc. Really, the rule of thumb is things should be cooked, but think about also how much preparation it takes to cook rice, to make bread, to make pasta. Do you really think that cavemen were eating pasta and bread and rice? I didn't think so. Me either. So today we're going to talk about prepping with paleo. Now you can do things like strawberries, freeze-dried strawberries. You can do things like freeze-dried bell peppers, which is fine and dandy. And prepping for a paleo diet makes it a little bit tougher, but at the same time, it's not impossible. Some of the things that we eat on a daily basis around here are acorn squash, spaghetti squash, mangoes, papayas. We eat a lot of fruit, eat a lot of salads, but we eat a lot of meat. Like I said, around 2/3 of our diet is meat, whether it's bacon, whether it's sausage in the morning, to sliced lunch meat at night. And by sliced lunch meat, I mean we cook a big roast beef, and then we slice it, put horseradish sauce on it. We have a little side dish, say fruit, salad, vegetables, something like that, and we eat it. That's our lunch. And dinner, usually big helping of meat, along with fruits, vegetables, greens, etc. Now, one thing you have to know, if you're going to go paleo, you have to get your intestinal flora right. Now, when the agricultural revolution happened, our brains actually shrank close to 15 to 20%. When we started eating meat and we started eating fish, our brains grew by roughly 60 to 65%. Now, if your body has only been used to eating Special K, pasta, your gut doesn't have the necessary intestinal flora to actually really process a lot of this stuff right. That's why people say, oh, well, you can't digest red meat. Well, yes, you can, if your intestinal flora gets back to what it's supposed to be, which is also why we're having a lot of acid reflux and a lot of things that we're having in the current society. So one thing you have to look for is some Greek yogurt. This brand is the Greek Gods traditional Greek yogurt, but you have to look on the side. This one says 5 live and active cultures, including probiotics. This is going to get some of that intestinal flora and fauna kind of back into your system. Another thing to look at is like Yakult. This has lactobacillus in it, which, like I said, is another way to get some of this intestinal flora back. One thing, especially if you have allergies that you want to take a look at, is local honey. The bee pollen and that will help to kind of get rid of some of your seasonal allergies, and you get used to your environment a little bit better. And if you're going to move, as soon as you get to that new place, make sure that you go find some local honey. Some of the natural bacteria that you're supposed to have might be inside some of that honey. For example, when calves come out of the mother's womb, they get dirt all inside their nose, their mouth, and that actually kind of gets some of that bacteria, beneficial bacteria in their gut. Then they also lick the ground. Same thing with dogs. They do the same thing. It's, like I said, getting some of that intestinal flora and fauna balanced. That way, you can actually digest and process the foods humans are supposed to process. Now, one of my favorite dishes is kind of like a pasta substitute. It's actually spaghetti squash. And today, for the first episode, I'm going to be showing you kind of my dish. Really, I'm just going to show you how to get the spaghetti squash open, how to cook it, and kind of what the end product is. I'm going to be using spaghetti squash, Italian sausage, poblano peppers. I'm going to cut them out and take the pith out so it's a little not as spicy. It's a little milder heat. And then I'm going to be taking bell peppers. I'm going to take red, yellow, and orange bell peppers, because each one of those different colors actually has a different set of minerals and different set of things that you need to kind of balance your body out. Now, I'm the kind of guy, I like to cut a spaghetti squash with a machete. Yes, I'm a survivalist. Yes, I'm a prepper. But I've actually found that cutting sweet potatoes, spaghetti squash, and acorn squash is just generally easier with a machete. So what we do is we find center. We cut in here, if we can, just like that. Get it in there a little better. Oops. There we go. So once you get it started, you'll notice that the spaghetti squash likes to crack really easily. And like I said, this is why I prefer a machete. Tried knives, but knives just kind of don't have the same weight and oomph as a machete does. And besides, you can use it kind of like you would use a machete or a knife to chop wood. You just kind of put it in the middle, tap the other side, and you just bring it all the way down. Well, I'm having a little more trouble with this one than I normally do. Spaghetti squash might be a little harder than what I'm used to. Not as easy as I normally do, but end product is actually the same. Now, one cool thing about cutting your own spaghetti squash, acorn squash, is that you can save the seeds. And coming up in a later episode, I'll show you why you need a garden, why gardening is essential to every man and woman's survival, regardless if you're a prepper, regardless if you're a survivalist. You need to garden. You need to grow your own food because, to be quite honest, who trusts the food supply anymore? It's like trusting a politician. So anyways, you can save the seeds from your spaghetti squash. Now, this one isn't unique, but it'll kind of freak you out if you've never seen it before. These are actually seeds sprouting inside the spaghetti squash plant. I've actually taken these and put them in soil and gotten my own plant out of it. So what you're going to do, you're going to take a spoon and you're going to scrape out, scrape out, scrape out, put it in there. Then you're going to take this and you're going to set it inside of an aluminum foil pan. I like to do them up, and yes, I need to get a bigger pan. I like to put these up, that way I make sure that all the heat comes in and evenly coats it. So like I said, I'll come back in a minute and I'll show you kind of what we do for the sauce. And I'm a guy that, as far as the paleo diet goes, I like still having dairy because I think there's some things in dairy, like I said, some of these active cultures that we still need. Plus, you're not looking at the carbohydrate factor that you're looking at when you're looking at eating a whole bowl of pasta, when you're eating a couple of slices of bread, a dinner roll, some things like that. So, like I said, this is a video to kind of show you and get you introduced to the paleo, or the perfect human diet, if you will. Now, if you're going to Google this, make sure that you take on both sides, because paleo diet has helped a lot of people overcome diabetes. I've got close relatives and family that are with that group. Some of them are complaining or were complaining, I should say, of the kind of lack of energy or feeling a little bit lethargic, we got some probiotics into them. They started feeling much better. But like I said, when you go out on the internet, think about how our modern agricultural system came to be. The reason that we're eating so many cereals and bread and pastas is because it stores almost indefinitely. So it's easy to feed a large amount of people, i.e. the American populace or the world populace, on rice, on wheat, on things that can store, like I said, almost indefinitely. You're going to see a lot of people that are going to put the paleo diet down. But a lot of people did the same thing with Atkins. Pretty much any diet, I'm sure somebody's put it down somewhere in the past. But the reason they're doing it paleo is because they don't think it's normal. You know, look at vegetarianism, look at veganism. People don't think it's normal to eat so much meat and fruit and vegetables. But like I said, how do you think humans evolved? Me personally, after doing a lot of research, I tend to agree with the paleo diet and what they're trying to do for the world and their local communities. So this is just my contribution to show you kind of how this diet works. And you'll notice you'll start losing weight, you'll start feeling better. And I know I still got something to lose. It was fresh after Christmas. I decided to break paleo for a bit, eat stuffing, and kind of fatten myself up. But you'll feel better, you have more energy, you can think clearer because like I said, our brains grew by 60% because of omega-3 fatty acids, because that we could digest B12. And another part of the intestinal flora is digesting B12, is one of the most specific things. People like to get B12 shots to feel more energized. Well, if you're already getting that into your body, you're going to feel that way anyways. You will notice a dramatic difference. But I will warn you, once you start using this, it's going to flush out all the bad bacteria in your system. And, you know, you are going to literally cleanse all the bad stuff out. So we'll come back, and I'll also be doing a video to show you kind of how to get your dog back to a better diet, because most preppers, survivalists should have a dog. We'll see you in a minute. Hey, welcome back. Now we're going to go ahead and finish up our recipe. And I know I told you what the ingredients were, but I figured it would be a better deal if I showed them to you. So this is the whole recipe. And yeah, it's a lot of ingredients, but this is a paleo recipe that is absolutely to die for. So let's start off, go from left to right. This is Parmesan Reggiano cheese, grated. We're going to throw it in with the sauce. For the sauce, we use heavy whipping cream and a touch of almond flour to kind of thicken it up, a touch of cornstarch. Not very much, you know, just enough to get it a little bit thicker. Sea salt, because it's really hard to oversalt with sea salt. Black pepper, and I found that with ground black pepper, you don't have to use near as much as if you're going to use it pre-ground. Olive oil, obviously, not only use a little bit kind of in the sauce, but to use to cook the sausages, the peppers, the onions, and it adds a good flavor. Now, I like to use pure olive oil, not extra virgin, because the flavor is not really there. Okay, so the next thing is Italian sausages. I like to cut them up, and then I'll go ahead and throw them back on the skillet for a little bit and mix it with the onions, so you still keep all those juices. And it kind of deglazes the pan a little bit, and you can do it with water, you can do it with whatever you want, but you want to keep those juices in, and the onions really kind of suck that flavor up. And kind of, you know, and if you'll notice, I do brown all of the Italian sausages, and I brown the onions. I kind of caramelize them a little bit, not horribly like, say, you would do in a French onion soup, but I do it just enough so that you still keep all that great, delicious flavor. Okay, so now we're using yellow bell peppers, red bell peppers, and orange bell peppers. You can throw green in there too, but I use poblano pepper or jalapenos for the green part of it. And like I said, there's different types of minerals and chemicals in each one of these different peppers that gives you a different outcome. Some of them have anti-cancer properties, some of them anti-inflammatory, diuretic, etc., etc., etc. If you want to know more about that, just go ahead and Google different colors and vegetables, different homeopathic remedies, or different health benefits. There we go. So the onions. Normally, I like to slice the whole thing in just a perfect ring, but lately I've kind of switched to this because they break up a little bit easier and absorb some of the juice a little bit better, and they cook down faster. Next is tomatoes. Tomatoes I add the very, very last thing. Spaghetti squash, sauce, and then tomatoes on top of that, and it gives it kind of that cold snap. And if you add them before, while the sauce is still cooking, it's just not a very good flavor. It makes the tomato soft and just kind of not a great taste with the Alfredo sauce that we're doing. Garlic. I like using a lot of garlic. I'm a garlic fiend. I love it. Always chop it up. Use fresh garlic. If not, you can use garlic powder. Try to stay away from garlic salt on something like this. It is really easy to oversalt with garlic salt. Next up is Italian parsley. Make sure you only fold it in half and chop it once. I like to use fresh, but you can also use just regular flakes. Just make sure you give it enough time in the sauce to really pull the flavor out. And like I said, poblano peppers. I also use Italian seasoning, just whatever Italian seasoning you can find. It's great value, Kroger, even McCormick brands. It's just a good mix of marjoram, thyme, parsley, oregano, and basil. You can also use fresh basil in this. Fresh basil in here is absolutely wonderful as well. Okay, now for the spaghetti squash. So, like I said, this is a pasta substitute. Now, if you notice, it looks a lot like spaghetti, hence spaghetti squash. So, like I said, we baked it 350 degrees in the oven for 45 minutes, face up, and then you take a fork and you just pick through it like this, and this is your end product. So, you put this on a plate, you cover the sauce in this and your tomatoes, and make sure you all combine all this together except for the tomatoes in your sauce just before you're going to pour it. Now, like I said, this is a pasta substitute, and this is an absolutely wonderful dish. And when we're done, we'll come back and show you what the finished product is. But beware, spaghetti squash can change your Alfredo sauce just a little bit. It tends to turn it a little bit sweeter. You can counteract that a little bit with just a touch of cayenne, or you can do a little bit more garlic. That'll help kind of ease the sweetness of it. But like I said, it's a phenomenal dish. It's been one of our dishes for years. We'll see you in a minute. Here is a dish ready to go. Now, mind you, the Alfredo sauce is not perfectly white because there's no flavor in a perfectly creamy, virgin-looking Alfredo sauce. This has all sorts of flavor written all over it. Just look at that. I'm telling you what, paleo dish to die for. We'll see you next time on some paleo recipes.